Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
What's up, everybody? This is your co-host, Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average podcast-producing badass.
I'm John Thomas. Some would say that I go a little too far with my love of all things horror, paranormal, and meta, but I say, talk nerdy to me, and I'm all yours.
I'm BJ Sewura, an aspiring paranormal musician who plays live for the dead because the living just doesn't want to hear me.
The Dead of Winter Horror Network and It Came from the 508 Productions invite you to endure the most terrifying immersive experience in all of podcasting. Beneath the Red Umbrella, now available wherever you listen to podcasts. Beneath the Red Umbrella, when the snow falls, the killing season begins.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our howling tribe out there, or Bodhi's furry friends? In today's episode, we'll be diving into the world of screenwriting, horror movies, and werewolves with special guest Bodhi Maxfield. Welcome to the show, Bodhi.
Hello.
What's up, Bodhi?
So we are excited to have Bodhi on. I know Bodhi because many moons ago, Trap Film Festival had a screenwriting contest called the Exerscripts, and Bodhi submitted his werewolf script called Wolves in the Trenches, and you were a winner. You actually won one of the festival prizes.
Yep.
Now, I don't want to talk all about it. Can you tell our listeners what's Wolves in the Trenches?
So much. Just kidding. Just everything. And so I was, the original script I was writing was like just a straightforward World War I script. And I'm like, that's not really me. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to add my favorite thing, werewolves. And so that's how it happened. And then I kind of delved more into it with like looking into folklore of France with werewolves, like the Beast of Givaudan, I think is how you say it. And that's more where I was getting a lot of inspiration from for it. But it's set during World War I. It's about a group of French and 2 American soldiers trying to infiltrate behind German lines that have a new weapon, and it turns out to be a mix of like ancient werewolves from like the way past, and you see flashbacks, and they're making a new version. So sort of like there's a lot of, now there's more like World War II werewolves, but I'm like, I wanted to do a different time period, so I did World War I instead.
Hey, you definitely did your research. I mean, I was one of the people that read the script as part of the contest, and I just remember texting my partner in the festival and just like, what in the world? Have you read this one yet? And he's like, I'm reading it right now. I'm like, this is amazing. And I would like to preface this for our listeners, because we don't tend to talk about as much outside of horror when it comes to films. I mean, we sometimes deviate, especially with like Star Wars and Marvel, but we don't go too far out. I will say when it comes to war films, anything period that involves war, I'm out. I check out. I'm just like, it's not my favorite thing. And so for your script to be war-based, and I'm all in, and I'm like, I want to see this made. This needs to be made. Like, that says a lot, because I really don't like anything, war-related. I get bored so easily.
Were you thinking of turning it into like a proof of concept or something? Maybe like get a trailer for it or something like that?
Yeah, so one of the prizes was making a not spec script. Oh my gosh, what is it called now? Pitch deck. Thank you. Oh my goodness, because I've been doing other spec things. So a pitch deck as sort of a way to send it out to producers. Haven't gotten anything yet, but still working on it. But we talked about like other similar movies that came out and their budgets, who we imagined would be in it, the sort of settings, which would be the Argonne Forest in France, and there's a lot of ruins in that area from throughout French history, which was another influence for me, both for the werewolves themselves, because there's a major part in the script where you see flashbacks of the werewolf, like the old werewolves fighting different people throughout French history. And I just think it's a really rich history that makes it even cooler with werewolves, because everything, just like every fantasy book is better with dragons, every horror movie is better with werewolves.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
And you really seem to have done a lot of research when it came to even describing like the uniforms and just the location and the artillery at that time period. Like it was so believable that when you dropped the werewolves in, it was seamless and it just made sense. I'm like, yeah, of course, World War I and werewolves, it's a thing. Yeah, I'd buy it.
I think I think part of it is like the sad fact with all wars are tragic, but there was just something about World War I being like the first real big. There were other wars in the early 1900s too, but like the first big war of the 1900s, when there's that huge like departure from like the human element to just machines. And that was another part of the like my thought of it, is that the generals on all the sides did not really consider the human laws. They basically just treated them as like beasts of burden. And then I was thinking beast werewolves. And that was a major part of my idea too, is that like through war and just all the different elements, the human soldiers stopped being seen as human anymore.
Yeah, they were just being pushed as animals.
Mm-hmm.
And really just, what's the word I'm looking for? Just easily discarded. They were disposable and replaced easily for the newer model, the enhanced version. And I think your script really showed that well.
Thank you.
Have you ever considered making that into a book?
So I'm not necessarily just a book, but I'm thinking about publishing it as the script. Like you can read the script, because I know that there's different like plays, and I've seen a few scripts be published as it as well. I might write a novel of it too. I don't know. There's so many options now.
Is this a feature script?
Yes, it is.
Oh, nice.
I mean, your ability to describe so succinctly is something that I think would work well in a book, should you ever choose to pursue that, or even like a graphic novel. You created such a visual and like rich world with your words. And we all know with screenwriting, you have to be so deliberate with what you include. And yet, even in the like way that you kept it, very precise, you were still able to create this visceral world that anybody reading it could see, almost like a book. So it would be interesting to see what you could do with it on top of a movie.
Thank you. I definitely think it lends itself to it possibly being a graphic novel too, sort of like 30 Days of Night. Originally it was a movie, but then there were a few different graphic novels set in the same world. And like one of them I read was set, which I guess now that I think about it, it sort of influenced me too, was set during World War II in Russia. I think it was called like Red Snow. Wait, no. No, Red Snow. Dead Snow was the one with the zombies. But then the same writer wrote a book about werewolves called Hawksford, which the werewolves in it look crazy different from like any sort of werewolf I've ever seen. I highly recommend the graphic novel. There was a short film of it too, which I thought was really good too. And that's another thing I really deviate slightly from talk about my script, but that's something I love about werewolves, is there's so many different versions, but they all have some concrete center. So because like I would say Lon Chaney Jr.'s Wolfman is incredibly different looking from the ones from Underworld, but they both have that tragic sort of, once they were regular people and then because of something made them into animals.
So in yours, do they change, or are they already? all the time werewolves?
There's this. So in it, there's two sets of werewolves. There's the old, I think I call them old breed ones, which are kind of, they sort of like the ones from Van Helsing, and they can churn if they want to most of the time, except for, I won't spoil too much if ever it becomes a movie. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But so there's the old ones that have the more animalistic, like the wolf snout, and then there's the new ones that that Germany is making into from their own soldiers that look, I would say, more like the I think it was like, I don't know what year it was, but the one with Benicio del Toro, more like that sort of Wolfman. And because I really liked them both, and originally I was like, which one do I choose? I'm like, wait, I don't have to choose. I'm gonna just put them both in there.
Now, you have this affinity for werewolves and this passion for
Yes.
werewolves. When did that first come about? Like, when did you figure out I love werewolves?
So there's two things I'll always remember. So one, when I was a kid, my uncle, who's obsessed with the classic horror movies, like that's what he likes. He doesn't like any new ones. I remember watching The Wolfman with him, and I think that was the first horror movie I've ever seen. It was either that or Frankenstein. I don't know, but I know Wolfman affected me more. I think because when I always liked animals and stuff. And then at the Denver Zoo, at the wolf exhibit, there was art, with all the information, and there was art of the Beast of Givaudan, and it was this gnarly looking wolf thing. Honestly, now I'm surprised they even had it there. Like a gnarly looking wolf, like clawing through a French peasant. And I saw that as a kid, and that's like, even now I can picture it as like exactly what it looked like. And just the vividness of that has always stayed with me.
What is it about the werewolf that even now you're drawn to?
So many things. They're just badass. They're just all so cool looking. But I think, like, it has that sort of like primitive fear of, like, both in oneself and outside, because it's basically someone letting go of who they are and becoming that, almost like a version of our way back ancestors who were closer to animals than what we are now. Or looking at it from someone coming at you, it's like a beast that, you don't know how to fight it, because all the lore and stuff, like silver was made up by Kurt Siodmak too for the Wolfman. That wasn't ever a thing before. So it's like, how do you beat this thing?
So your type of werewolves, are they, I guess the more modern ones, are they can think, they're not just purely animalistic, right? They're kind of
Yeah.
like you had mentioned 30 Days of Night. I kind of think of it in those terms, maybe. Like they're brutal, but they have a plan.
Yeah, that's how in the script, that's how, like, the older ones who have been around for a long time, and a lot of their names too are like ancient names. Like a few of them are like ancient Germanic names, ancient Roman names, like earlier medieval French names, compared to the German soldiers that are become this feral thing that have lost themselves. So that's another thing that I like about werewolves too, with that dichotomy of how in some movies and stuff they can control themselves, while in others they can't. Because, like, with Underworld, how there's the Lycans that can control themselves and turn when they want to, and then there's the original werewolves in that series that stay that beast forever. And I think that's another thing that I find interesting with them. Same with people, is that, can you control your urges, or are you just going to become basically an animal again?
That's what I love about werewolves is they do really kind of represent that duality, right? Of like our primitive nature versus that kind of soft humanity that we oftentimes are represented as. And then you have this werewolf that's like warring between that humanity and that primal nature. And so it's really interesting that that's what you gravitate to. And you've researched a lot of like werewolf origins and werewolf lore. what would you say is your favorite one that you've come across? Or do you have a favorite?
There's I have the notes for it because there's one that I think is kind of funny. So his name was, I think, Thies. I don't know how to say it. Kaltenberg, which was in Sweden, and he was arrested because and accused of being a werewolf. And his argument was like, yeah, I am a werewolf, but I'm a werewolf that like fights witches and stuff. He called himself a hound of God. And and so that, I just think that idea is really funny. And so unlike a lot of other men, and predominantly men, were accused of being werewolves, while women, more often it was witches, but a lot of times it was the same tribunals and things like that. But he wasn't executed. He was exiled because the judge, because he also did like sort of wizardry, like he healed people with things that they would see as like occult and stuff. But I just think that's funny that he's like, no, I'm a good werewolf.
I'm a good dog.
Yeah. But I think there was another one I think is really interesting too. And actually there's a few different, probably one of the most famous like wood carvings of someone, like if you look it up, like German wood carving of a wolf man, it's like a man with a giant beard and like wild hair on all fours with a baby in his mouth. And that's the trial of Peter Stump, I think is how you say it. He has like 5 different ways of spelling his last name. But that's considered like one of the first cases of like recorded lycanthropy in a trial in Europe, and also considered one of the first like known serial killers in Europe.
I've never, I've heard of hellhounds. I've never heard of a hound of God.
Yeah. And that's another thing I think is kind of interesting with our like society's look on werewolves and wolves as a whole, is now I feel like most people are cool with werewolves, but throughout history, like it's so interesting how some cultures revere not werewolves, revere wolves, others hate them and stuff. So like Rome was founded by 2 boys that were saved by a she wolf, and they continue to have some influence with wolves. Like in the early Roman legions, the velites would wear like wolf. They wouldn't wear armor; they would wear like wolf cloaks and stuff because they wanted to emulate that sort of thing. Or like the Norse, there's the berserkers, and then I have no idea how to actually say it, but so there were berserkers who wore bear skins, and then there were others that wore wolf skins. And you actually see that if you've seen a Northman, that's what he is in it. And I totally thought he was going to turn into a werewolf in that movie. I'm very disappointed he didn't.
Well, I like that there, if you notice, there is a distinction that like spirituality, wolves are often represented as like a positive symbol in different cultures. The wolves are like pure wolves, but when it comes to a human turning into a wolf or a werewolf, it's like, no, that's naughty. So like it's cool if they're born that way. It's not cool if you turn into that way. Mm-hmm. Did you read about the one legend that involves Zeus and wolves?
Yes, Lycan.
Yeah, that was fun. I didn't know how to say that, but yes, Lycan. Apparently he cooked a sacrifice for Zeus.
Yeah, it was his own son, too.
Oh, it was his son. Okay, yeah. I didn't get that far.
Yeah, because he wanted to test, because he's like, if he's a god, he would know that it's human meat. I'm like, or maybe he'd just be like, this is really weird pork.
This is really gross. Yeah. Kind of gamey. But yeah, it was interesting because then it's like Zeus is like, oh, you want to feed me people meat? I'm going to turn you into a wolf.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and how he because Lycan also had like 100 sons too. Like you can look up a whole list, and I think in some versions he cursed like all of them to become wolves too. Others he killed all of them except for Lycan and stuff. And yeah, it is interesting how turning into a wolf is seen as punishment in some cultures too.
The Lycan too is like lycanthropy.
Yep, that's where it comes from.
And it's a curse, like you said, right? It's not something that you do to as a positive, right?
Mhm.
Whereas I don't know, I guess being a vampire, you could go either way, right? Is it a negative or a positive? But I don't know. I feel like vampires are, I don't know if they're more seen as a positive to be turned into a vampire than a werewolf, because werewolf you don't have control, right?
Mhm.
And it's not necessary. It's more of an inconvenience than a superpower, or like,
Mhm.
you know, than a life choice, I guess.
But werewolves, like, they have so many different origins and different types of werewolves, like vampires. Because I know we had a vampire episode where even what caused the vampirism varies. It could be a demon, it could be infected blood, it could be like different ways to be a vampire, become a vampire, like different origin stories. And that's the same for werewolves, because there are werewolves that they go by the rules we see in pop culture, typically where it's around the full moon, and even that's expanded where it's like 3 days of the full moon. And then others, the lore is they could change at any point. And so it's fun to see how even within werewolves there are the different origins and the different rules, right?
Mhm.
Actually, just
Yeah,
today, one of my friends posted a film that's called Werewolf Santa Seasons Eatings. It sounds amazing. Basically, after Santa is bitten on Christmas Eve, amateur monster hunter Lucy witnesses his transformation into a werewolf. Armed with only a rusty ice skate and a vague understanding of how werewolves operate, Lucy and her family set out to save Christmas.
I love it.
So,
I love that for two reasons. Not just because that's hilarious, but then because I'm not sure where in Europe, but in medieval folklore, a child born on Christmas is going to become a werewolf.
what?
Like it's just automatically you're cursed that you're going to be a werewolf. And in the Oliver Reed movie 1961, The Curse of Werewolf, that's one of the like reasons why he becomes a werewolf is he's born on Christmas.
I think there's an urban legend or like a cryptid, right? Somewhere in the Midwest that we had talked about where like there's a werewolf baby that was born because he was born of Satan and a witch. And so that somehow begat a werewolf.
As you do.
So all my fellow witches, you want to have a werewolf baby, procreate with the devil.
So all the babies, and this is in France. Is that where this is taking place, or is it just
Yes,
anywhere?
in my script.
Why France of all places?
Are you saying for my script or for
Just in general,
just
right?
in
Like, because you
folklore?
found a lot of like werewolf stuff in France, right?
Yeah, it seems like it's a lot in France or Germany
Yeah.
because like the Beast of Givaudan was a real event in France, and we don't actually know what the animal was, but there was something. There's different theories that it was like a striped hyena that escaped a zoo, or lion that escaped a zoo, or it was wolves, or I don't know, maybe it was a werewolf. But I don't know what it is with France. France and Germany just really like their werewolf stuff, I guess.
So I did a quick ask of the Google. And it says the concept of the werewolf, or loup-garou in French,
Oh yeah, Luke.
surged in prominence during the medieval and Renaissance periods, marked predominantly by the widespread poverty, famine, and disease that created a fertile ground for fear and superstition. So humans were a bit more susceptible to believing things about people transforming into wolves, particularly compelling, which if you think about it, people are going through poverty, they're going through famine and disease. Like there is like a primal nature coming out, right? People are hungry, they're angry, they're aggressive, and who knows? But still, why the werewolf?
That is it. I do think it's interesting just with how throughout the world there are different legends, like how it seems like every culture has some version of a giant or some version of a dragon, and so many seem to have some version of an animal, like someone turning into an animal or other way. So the example I was talking about with Peter Stump, he said that he had like a belt made out of wolf pelt, and that's how he could turn. And then in Africa, in different places, there's where hyenas that have a similar thing too. With they were witches or warlocks that could turn into hyenas, and then there's like the folklore throughout North America too with that. It's just so interesting.
No, that's cool. Reminds me of like Power Rangers, right? You got their
That's what I was going to say.
right? It's like you just show it to them and be like, "No, don't mess with me. I'll turn into a werewolf and bite you."
Well, what's interesting is in America, we had the witch trials, right? And like the witch hunting really spread. But in France, there was a period called the French werewolf epidemic or the French werewolf panic, where they were literally launching investigations because there were so many reports of this happening. And like the panic was widespread. And we laugh about it now because it's like, really? But like, look what happened when the witch trials went amok. So apparently that was like a really big thing that happened in history, which is funny because I've never heard of that until now.
It's yeah, and it's also wild too, like with like clinical lycanthropy, which is a true like a real thing. Is we have evidence and recordings of that through history too. Like in England, King James the Fifth, I think, who was one that was definitely like all for witch trials. He wrote in his manual about witches and stuff that he talks about the lycanthropy too, but he thought it was like a medical thing too, not actual like witchcraft one, which is so interesting that some people think that.
It's interesting. 1970s, apparently there was a mini Swedish panic too of werewolves. So it's funny how much you can find on Google.
I wonder if it's like, because my mind goes to a couple different places, like because we've talked about shapeshifters, right? And a lot of like shapeshifters and stuff. A lot of the people that have seen them have described them as like big wolves, like big, almost like werewolves, right? And so I don't know if that plays into it at all in that part of the world, or if it has nothing to do with it. But it just is, at least on this side of the world, right? Like in like Utah, right? In all of those areas, there's a lot of talk about that. And so I don't know. I don't know if it's the same thing or if it's just a completely different, depending on the time period and what was going on there. Maybe they had a lot of wolves there at the time that were stealing all the food or something. I don't know.
I mean, the fact that they had werewolf witch trials is quite interesting. But apparently, in 1765, there was the beast of Gévaudan, and like they said, he killed over like 100 people, and people claimed it was a werewolf. And so, I guess a king intervened and was like, "I offer a reward for anyone that can bring me this beast." So maybe werewolves really are real.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun dun dun! Oh.
That would be amazing.
I mean, the full moon is in like 5 or 6 days, so
Ooh.
This is an appropriate topic.
yes.
So would they wait until a full moon, and then if they don't change, then it's like, oh, okay, you're good. Like you're not a werewolf.
The werewolf with the full moon, I think that actually came later. That might be from the Wolfman itself, with the because Kurt Siodmak made up so much of that lore, like the poem with it. I think that was actually from that movie, because a lot of the other times, like the trial of Peter Stump, because he didn't talk about a moon. He just talked about the power he had from the like wolf pelt belt. Yeah. And a lot of the other times it was that because it was like a gift from the devil. That's how they got to change. So, and they would hide it in the forest and stuff. And the trial tried to look for him. He was sentenced and executed, but it wasn't because he was deemed a werewolf. It was because there was evidence of him actually just killing the people.
I think people also cross lore because wolves howl at the moon. So they just assume also the moon has some kind of play in it. But also, it's not to undershadow either. I guess that's not even a word. I'm just making up words. But also, I think it also goes hand in hand with the full moon and the idea that people go kind of crazy around the full moon.
Yep.
Like,
Lunatic.
lunatics.
Yep.
So it's like it would only make sense that during this time we have our lunatics and we have our werewolves.
Mm-hmm. And we have our elementary school kids who are just as crazy around the full moon.
Well, and you can see better at, when it is a full moon, that's when a lot of deer and animals will run around, right? When it's a full moon out. And so maybe that's part of it too, because it's when you could get some good hunting in, right?
Yeah.
But I do agree with you, Bodhi. I do believe that full moon association directly with the werewolves did come to play with the movie and not prior to that.
Not actual lore.
Yeah. But it's still interesting. And now with you guys, what's your favorite werewolf lore? Like, does your werewolf only transform during the full moon, or are you like, man, no, I like a beast that can happen throughout the entire month?
I kind of like it. I think the full moon thing is really interesting. I think it's more interesting when it's less of a curse and more of like an emotional state, like in some lore and movies when someone just becomes so enraged and stuff, like the berserkers and wolf skin people from Norse history, actually not mythology. But I think how because it's that thing of letting the beast out from you. I think that's the most interesting. I do like the full moon thing because then it has more of that tragic. I just like werewolves. I like them all.
It's like all of them. I'll take them
Yeah, like I remember when the Harry Potter Prisoner of Azkaban came out, and so many werewolf fans were complaining about the way Lupin looked. I loved it. It creeped the heck out of me, but it was so interesting because it was definitely more focused on the pain aspect of turning into a monster, not the Van Helsing badass. Oh my god, I want to be this werewolf. That was me as a kid. That was my first thought seeing that movie.
I love the way they portrayed him, and like that scene that they chose to put in the film where he comes up against the boggart to like block Harry, and he's afraid of the full moon, and you realize just how powerful that is. Like, oh, so great.
I would say for me, I really love, obviously, there's so many. I'm a big fan of werewolf stuff too. Like it's way up there for me. What we do in the shadows, right? Like this werewolves getting pissed off. Yeah,
werewolves, not werewolves.
We're gonna lose it. We're gonna lose it, right? Keeping tabs on each other, like as a pack, like that's amazing.
It's like an AA meeting.
I love that how they do that. But also, just I don't know, like one I haven't really seen it done yet very well or at all. Really, is where the transformation isn't painful, right? Where it's almost like because you're becoming this powerful thing, like it I don't know, like obviously the pain of like your joints breaking and all that, and you're transforming, right? But I don't know if there's a way to show it that's so the opposite of that, right? Almost like you're getting off to it in a way, like just like you're just I don't know, like less of a painful thing and more of a like this is who I really am.
Have you ever watched Blood and Chocolate? I think it's Blood and Chocolate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the most solid film, but I feel like that one does a pretty decent job of showing them embracing being werewolves and like that transformation into this freeing, I can run, I can be wild, and this is who I am kind of thing.
I'd say in the Howling too, even though the transformation itself looked painful, he was smiling the whole time with it too. That one's I love it, but so gross with like the bubbling in his head. Oh, yeah. It's not one of my favorites, but it's still so well done. I would say my favorite's probably American Werewolf in London for the transformation itself.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, what's your favorite transformation?
Yeah, definitely that one. Rick Baker, love his stuff.
I like the transformation and the concept. So for me, I like it being tied to the moon, and for a few reasons. One, because it is tragic, and this idea that you are tied to something whether you want it or not, this is going to happen. But I also like the inverse of that for the ones that want to happen. They want it to be all the time. but yet they're like, oh, I can only be a werewolf around this specific time. And so it's kind of tragic for either way. I don't want to be one or I do want to be one. And yet I'm bound by this thing in the sky, and how that's not very fun. I felt like as much as it didn't age well with time, An American Werewolf in Paris played on that really well, because, you know, you have the werewolves trying to empower themselves, and they're trying to create a serum that will, you know, force the transformation outside of the full moon.
And same kind of thing happened in the new Wolfman movie too, with how Anthony Hopkins' character 100% would rather be a Wolfman, I guess, in that version, than being a regular person, because that's how he felt that he was above everyone else.
Wolf too, right? Because you have the wolf who doesn't want to be a werewolf, and then you have, is it James Spader, who's like enjoying it? He likes being a predator.
yeah.
He likes being the hunter, and they're trying to figure out, you know, who's the wolf that's doing all this, and he's like, ha ha ha, it's me, I like it.
What about the my favorite transformation, Teen Wolf? He's on the basketball court.
Just like the fuzzy furry.
Yes. And then they stop for a minute, and then he starts bouncing the ball like he knows what he's doing, and then they just start playing basketball again. It's no big deal, right? That's the best.
That's pretty good too.
I wish more movies would do that with, I mean, werewolves specifically, right? Like they did it with basketball. I don't remember what Teen Wolf 2 was. I forget which one that one was about.
Was it football? I think.
Was it football?
I think it was football.
I think it
But
was
yeah,
football.
doing more with that, like using it for
Like Air Bud, but with a wolf.
yes,
Right.
That's exactly what that movie is.
They're both canines, I guess.
It makes
Who'd have
sense.
thought? Dogs are good at basketball.
And hockey.
Or maybe
They
a
can dribble.
werewolf.
And
Ooh, what about a werewolf like detective?
Wolf Cop. Wolf Cop. Have you seen that movie? Have you seen that movie? I love it. Oh my god, that movie's amazing. Oh,
Saving it
it's
in
so
my phone
fun.
now. Wolf
I
Cop.
absolutely love that movie. Partly, he just like, even though it's like a campy movie, the way he like his not art, like the makeup design for him looks so cool though, and it's just funny because he's part man, part wolf, all cop. That's the tagline.
It's like RoboCop, but wolf.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
werewolf. That's amazing.
I really enjoyed Cursed with Christina Ricci.
Yeah.
And I thought it did a really solid job too of showing that the transformation occurs prior to the full moon. So yes, their full transformation is during the full moon, like the 3 days. However, the senses are heightened year round. And so her going through that and not realizing I'm turning into a werewolf. So like her smelling the like blood and, you know, being ravenous for raw meat. It's like, you don't think about that, right? You just assume they only have those primal urges and those primal senses during that their full transformation. And then this movie shows you, nah, that's year round, which that'd be kind of torturous, right? Like you're a human, but you're like, I want red meat all the time. I mean, I do anyways, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, so
What's
do I.
that? That's a keto diet, isn't it?
maybe all our werewolves are, all our people on keto diets are secretly werewolves.
I think that
Makes sense.
Is Ginger Snaps, is that a werewolf movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I haven't seen that. I've just seen posts about it recently. Because I guess I don't know if it was an anniversary of it coming out or something. But is that one any good?
I love Ginger Snaps.
Yeah.
I haven't actually seen that. I don't think I've seen that one because I've seen Blood and Chocolate. I know it's like somewhat similar plots, isn't it? No, you're shaking your head. Okay, never mind.
No.
Never mind.
Completely different. So
Sure.
Blood and Chocolate's more of a romance. I mean, it's really more of a romance, and it involves werewolves.
Wait,
But-
no, never mind. Switch it. I've seen Ginger Snaps. I haven't seen Blood and Chocolate. That's what it is.
Okay, because I was
Yeah.
going to say Blood and Chocolate's a romance film, whereas Ginger Snaps, she's just like bitten and on a rampage.
Yep.
You know, it's like Frozen meets werewolves.
Okay.
Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong.
John's like, no. It really is. Like, you have two sisters who are, they're sisters, right? I believe they're sisters.
Yeah,
who
I
are
think so.
like super close, super attached, and then one becomes a werewolf. I mean, come on, Frozen, anybody? I mean, let's be real. Elsa was gonna kill the whole town. Like, she's gonna freeze everyone over. So,
In the original
Fuck
script,
those
she
guys.
would have when she was
Yeah.
a villain.
I mean, it really is Frozen, but with fangs.
Mm-hmm.
That's their new
Haha.
logline.
Whoa!
So there's a movie that just came out. It's called Cocaine Werewolf. Is that
I'll stick with
something
Cocaine
that,
Bear.
right? Like, I don't even think it matters. Like with a werewolf, like if it's on cocaine or not, like it's still gonna
It's
ravage
already, yeah.
everything.
I feel like
It's
It's gonna be
meth
worse.
is. I think meth seems more depending on what kind of werewolf you're gonna be.
Although, I mean, maybe it has the inverse effect. Kind of like, people that take, like, Adderall calms you, unless, or whatever, Ritalin calms people that need that to, who need it to truly calm them. And if you don't actually need it, it amps you up. So maybe that's what, like, meth and cocaine do to werewolves. Like, everybody else, it, like, amps them up, and on werewolves, they're like, oh, I want to chill.
There's a script
Right.
right there. It's a drug lord that does cocaine and just to keep him calm when he changes. There you
Weed
go.
wolf.
Weed wolf.
Weed Wolf. Yeah.
It's your neighborhood fang guy. So we're missing a very important werewolf movie here.
Twilight.
Silver Bullet.
Yes, I was hoping we were going to talk about that. Love that book too.
Oh, so good. And Silver Bullet, I feel like, especially for its time when it came out, the like practical effects to create that werewolf, that was pretty cool. John's like, I've never seen it.
I have to. A million times.
I'm teasing.
Actually, it's been a really long time for me, for sure. But obviously, you can't. I mean, Gary Busey, Corey Haim, right? Like,
Yeah.
Stephen King really like did not pull any punches when it came to Silver Bullet. I mean, he's like, okay, not just a kid, because that would already be terrifying, right? A kid being stalked by a werewolf, but a kid in a wheelchair. Like, he's like, let's just really go terrifying. And like, I thought it was such a well done film, but an amazing book.
And I think that's another good example of like the werewolf being a tragic figure, but Stephen King did such a good job of still making him the villain too. So like you feel bad for him, but you're like, I still want the kid to live, not you.
Yeah, I mean, it's tragic, but ultimately, it's still something out there murdering
Yeah.
innocent. It's not like it's out there killing murderers and the bad people.
Yeah.
It's like not discriminating who it's eating. So, which maybe it can't. Once it's in werewolf mode, it just like there is no discernment. You are the beast, but I don't know. Because when he approaches him, he's not a wolf yet before he turns, and he's already like, oh, I'm sorry, I have to eat you.
Yeah. and then when he knows that, oh my God, I forgot his name, but the main character, when he knows that the preacher is a werewolf, then the preacher's like, I really gotta kill you now.
Yeah. Like, you can't blame it on the beast mode anymore. You're saying this as a preacher. Like, sorry, Marty, you gotta die. What? It's not like, hey, Marty, can you lock me up during the full moon? It's, well, I'm gonna have to kill you. And if you don't go quietly, I gotta kill your sister too. And your uncle.
Them's the facts.
Them's be the facts. You brought this on yourself, you nosy kid.
Right. Just leave it alone, guys.
Just leave it alone.
Leave the werewolves alone.
I mean, the werewolves don't leave them alone.
No.
I just want werewolves to be good guys, right? They're always bad guys. Can't
They should be
just
the wolves of God.
Twilight.
Right, exactly.
Wolves of God.
Yeah.
You know what? And those are probably the only positive werewolves are the ones that are associated with Native Americans. Because if you think about it, when they're written into books or movies, and it's typically, a Native American driven, like the tribe is werewolves, whether you see it in Twilight or otherwise, they tend to be positive and they're against the vampires. But I don't know. Why are werewolves against vampires, by the way?
Great question.
I mean, why are predators against aliens?
Fair points.
I want to see Predator versus Werewolf is what I want to see.
That'd be cool.
We saw a predator versus a grizzly bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't go well for the grizzly.
I feel like
No,
so often there's like, oh, Predator versus Superman, but like regular people can beat predators. They're not going to win against, like there was this one, it's like, oh, can a predator beat Darth Vader? No, he's not going to beat Darth Vader.
Well, can a predator beat a werewolf, but also be turned into a predator werewolf?
Would be pretty cool.
That would be freaking
He
sweet.
would definitely be killed by his clan though, because they're like, that's going too far.
Or he would kill all of them.
Blast.
No, and here's why.
Why?
Because if we go on lore that werewolves originate from humans, then it would require human DNA, right? Because we don't see werewolf rabbits. Like we have Banicula, so we know bunnies can be vampires, but we don't see cross species outside of humans that are werewolves that I can think of. And so to then transfer that into like a predator DNA, unless at some point way back in time the predators were originally like some kind of human DNA, then I don't think they would be able to take that virus.
So if werewolves eat, because sometimes there's the story of good werewolves that don't eat people, they eat rabbits and all that kind of stuff. So if they eat other animals or if they bite other things but they get away, they're not going to change. So it's only humans that would change if they get bit.
I don't know, maybe a deer would start eating some rats and stuff. I've seen videos of deers eating meat, so maybe they were bitten by a werewolf. Who knows?
That's what the mad deer disease really is.
Yeah.
Or what is it called? With the
Mad cow disease.
It's a zombie deer.
With the eyes that are facing forward or whatever?
Was
Lyme
there's
disease.
like the deer actually have what's called a zombie disease.
Yeah.
It's like some kind of wasting brain disease, but maybe that's what that is. No, I think because werewolves start as human, if all of the lore follows the human origin, then I would think that it can't cross species. However, if it's a demonic origin, like Satan and a witch had a baby, then maybe.
True.
Or we can pull some kind of alien resurrection thing and have freaking werewolves that way. Like, I don't know.
Because can a chest buster happen with a predator?
Yes.
Yeah, and there's a
It
predator
happened
alien
in
in
AVP.
Did it
AVP.
happen in AVP?
Yeah,
Okay.
AVP or
Yeah.
well at the end of AVP. But like what if a chest burster comes out? Wait, if a chest burster comes out of a werewolf, it probably would still be a human though, because werewolf's only part of the time.
And actually, would it suppress the werewolf transformation? Like if an alien invades, because that is a different parasite or a different, invasion going on in the body, would that suppress the werewolf transformation?
I think it would depend on what kind of werewolf it is. Like if it was ones from Underworld with the virus, then again with the like I don't remember. I think they call it like the Lycan virus. Could it possibly even kill the chestburster too? Who knows?
Ooh.
Yeah.
So we have so many questions.
Yeah.
Because what if werewolves are aliens? What if it is an alien
Maybe they're
virus?
from the moon. They've come from the moon. Which,
That's why
speaking
it's so
of which,
moving.
there's an amazing comic, I guess graphic novel called Werewolves on the Moon, and they fight vampires on the moon. It's hilarious because it's these three werewolves that are like that go on a shuttle to like a moon base because they're like we can be free up here and stuff. And then on the shuttle too, there's also vampires.
Because I feel like if it's virus based, then only one virus could be dominant, which is why I think in some movies, if a werewolf bites a vampire, it's not going to change the vampire because the vampire virus is already rampant.
Yeah.
However, we've seen the underworld where like certain species are able to become hybrids because their DNA supports that. So
And then in Van Helsing, the reason he can kill Dracula is because the werewolf curse is cooler than a vampire curse. I'm fairly certain
That is
that's
the
one.
question, actually, that I had. Which one is better?
Vampires, duh.
No, werewolves.
Well,
Because I think with the vampires, because they need that constant sustenance with it, meaning that the virus could potentially die out, while with werewolves, they don't need it as much. Yes.
You have like the vampire obsessed person over here and the werewolf obsessed person over there. And
Right.
somewhere in between, we have Scott Speedman. What was his character's name?
Michael?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's a
That's so funny. I would not have known the actor's name. I would have only known it as Michael Corbin.
And I only know the actor's name. I'm like, oh gosh. But that was my favorite thing. So I will say this. Back in, I was probably in middle school, maybe early high school. I think I was in middle school. Before Underworld came out, I was obsessed with the idea of, I called it a like empire, of like a werewolf and a vampire being a hybrid. And I was obsessed with that. Like that used to be my old school, like empire at AOL.com. It's not in use anymore. So listeners, please don't email it because I don't know who owns it. But that was a thing that I was obsessed with. So I was excited when they introduced that into the underworld and that became a thing. That was super exciting for me because I've always liked the idea of matching the primitive nature and the speed and the beast of the werewolf mixed with the grace and the deadliness of the vampire.
Yeah, all of those. I love those movies. Like the three of them. Not after that. After that, they kind of went off. I think they went off the rails a little bit because it was like the first two and then the prequel, right? When they
Prequel's the best.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
good. I was very impressed, and obviously, you know, because that's I think is like the best character, right? Is the original? He's not original Lycan. I guess he is, right?
Yeah, he's the first Lycan.
That can change.
Was it Lucius, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the first werewolf was... I know way too much lore about Underworld.
Poor Lucius.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like when it comes to movies that directly pit the werewolf and the vampire together, the vampires are always demonized and the werewolves are always like more of the relatable, sympathetic characters.
As it should be.
And I think that's because they do still carry their humanity to an extent. They're still partially human, so they tend to be on the side of the humans. They ally with the humans, even with book series. Oh, I forget what the books are right now, but there's a vampire book series out there. Is it Vampire Academy? I don't know, but like same thing. The werewolves are on the side of the humans pretty much.
Well, it's because the werewolves still have a soul, right? Like that's the whole thing with vampires. Do they have souls? Do they change when they do become a vampire? They're still themselves, but they're like a demon version of themselves, right? Kind of.
It depends on the book series.
It depends on
Yeah, like in Buffy, how the when they become vampires, their soul is gone, so it's like only the body is left. But then the werewolf in the show, Seth Green, isn't evil because werewolves are cooler.
Bite me, Bodhi.
I don't like Seth Green as a werewolf. They could have had somebody better, I think. That's just my...
I mean, they could have. No, I liked him.
Yeah,
He's really...
yeah. But he
Did
was
you
kind of
guys-
a wimpy one, though. He was kind of a wimpy one, right?
That's true. He didn't embrace it like some do. Like, have you ever seen the Alvin and the Chipmunks movies in like the early 2000s where they did a bunch of horror mashups? So like the first one was Alvin and Chipmunks meet Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And then there was Alvin and Chipmunk and the Wolfman, and Theodore becomes a werewolf or a
Where?
I think they called him a werewolf,
werewolf.
which doesn't make
Yeah.
sense because
That's
the word
amazing.
were, as we learned from Prisoner of Azkaban, were is the Anglo-Saxon word for man. So he'd be a man monk.
He's a wolf monk?
Yeah.
A chip wolf.
Chip wolf.
Yeah. So in the book series, the Hollows book series, it's if you haven't read it, it's a really fun one. It's definitely not for children, but one of the lore that she created in that world for around vampires is that you have vampires, but then you have fully undead vampires. So for the vampires that are not fully undead, they still have their soul, but they still have to feed. They still have, they're still able to walk around in the day and things like that. So there's certain things that they're still able to do as soon as they fully die. So it's like a second death. They go through two deaths. So when they go through their second death is when they become the full undead. And at that point, they can't be in the sun and they lose their soul. And all they basically do is feed. They're obsessed with feedings and they're deadly, but they're more powerful. Their vampire powers, whether it's, hypnosis or anything like that, that becomes fully just activated. So I like that lore. I like the concept that you die the first time. The virus is there. You're still technically a vampire. You still have to feed. You still have enhanced powers and senses. But because you have your soul, it's not all the way activated. Then when you die, your second death is when that happens. But if you die a third death, so like let's say they kill you as an undead vampire, then it's done.
Then you're done.
You're done. There's no more. There was one book series I read though with the alphas, and I don't remember what it was, but where like the alpha werewolves were the only ones who could create other werewolves. The other ones couldn't pass on the infection or curse or whatever you want to call it. It was only the alphas.
There was another, just a single book I read way too young because it was really graphic. But in it, the main character, all the werewolves, it's a genetic thing in it. But they talked about that, like sometimes, but it's like a werewolf and a werewolf have to have kids together for it. And if like a werewolf has it with a human, they have like werewolf traits like wanting meat and stuff like that, and a lot of times they would become like great warriors or like serial killers and stuff. And just think big jump, but I just think that's super interesting too because it's kind of that theme of like the beast inside you and stuff. And I was going kind of jumping back a bit when you're talking about like good depictions of werewolves. Have you ever played the tabletop role-playing game Werewolf the Apocalypse? So it's really fun. So it's the same universe as Vampire the Masquerade, and
Fun.
You're werewolves trying to save the world, and all the different. I think they call them packs. It might be packs, yeah, because I think for vampires it's clans, but they're all from different cultures that definitely like embrace the natural element. Like there's a lot of Celtic influence. There's a lot of Native American influence. There's African folklore and stuff like that, and kind of what you're talking about with the Native American influence, it seems like when they're connected to nature itself, not people as much, it seems like that's when they're considered better.
I think so too. I would like to see like a mashup of vampires and werewolves teaming up together to get rid of zombies.
That'd be so easy though, because all the vampires have all the cool money and stuff, and then they just drop from like planes. They just drop werewolves. That would be fun though. I like that.
Just drop the werewolves into
Yeah,
an island. But because the werewolves are, partially human, can they be infected with the zombie curse? And then do you have like zombie wolves?
No, werewolves are too cool to be zombies. Vampires, on the other hand, but that's like what they
watch it.
That's like what I think it was in Canada to like lower the moose population. They literally like airdropped wolves in. So I'm just picturing that with zombies, just airdropping werewolves.
It's full moon, guys, load up. Ding. Oh my gosh. Do we think there is a creature out there in the current horror world that would not do well against werewolves?
I think it depends on the zombie. I think like if it's like 28 days later or 28 years later, I'm very excited about that coming out. I feel like
trailer just dropped.
Yep, but like if we're going like the original George A. Romero ones, nah. Then again, would the werewolves get sick if they eat the meat?
That's what I'm wondering. Do they get the infection? Even if they don't become zombies, does it do something to them?
Yeah, because like wolves can eat some rotting meat, but not that much, and that
It
could
would
probably
with the vampires.
they wouldn't drink the blood because they're like, ew, gross. I need prime A plus from the
Exactly. They
bank.
wouldn't be tempted.
Yeah.
Here's the other question: if a werewolf bites a zombie but doesn't eat him, does the zombie become a werewolf?
Ooh.
I think it wouldn't. I feel like it would only affect it if they were living, like if it was
You
like
sure?
28
If
days.
they were living
It'd have to
zombies.
be
Because
part of-
against dead tissue, because you can't. I'm not a scientist. I don't know. You can't infect dead tissue, right?
But I mean, if they're walking, are they really dead?
Depending on the version.
And like Ashley was saying earlier, is it a virus that's already taken over, like a vampire or whatever? Like, is it something that can't be changed any further?
Yeah. It's the dominant virus, so like it can't be contaminated. I don't know.
Right.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
But yeah, werewolves, there's something sexy in the beast nature and the primal nature of the werewolves that's opposite of the vampire sexiness that we oftentimes see. So I love them in their own nature. Now, outside of werewolves, do you have a secondary horror love?
I do love vampires too. But the vampires I like are not the sexy ones. I like Nosferatu. I like the last voyage of the Demeter that came out last year, I think, right? That was such a cool looking. I like the vampires that look like vampire bats.
You like the creatures.
Yeah, like the strain. Or I'm so excited for the new Nosferatu. I'm literally looking at a pop figure of Nosferatu right now, and he's just looking at me. It's very disconcerting. Yeah.
See, I love all vampires, so I do love the creature vampires.
I mean, I do like the like Dracula is awesome. He's one of the coolest characters ever too.
I enjoyed the 30 Days of Night vampires. Those were so freaking scary.
Yep.
You know the vampires I didn't enjoy? Did you guys ever see that movie, The Lost Boys?
What?
Yeah, those vampires suck. They're so bad.
I've been staked right through the heart. How dare you?
I really like that movie.
He's joking. That's one of his favorites.
Oh, phew.
He's messing with you. He said that just to get a rise out of me.
Okay. Because I love it because of how it's literally like a horror version of Peter Pan, which they should do more movies like that, but not directly, not like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. They should do other ones that like inspired by.
Yeah.
Because like if you didn't think about it right away, like you probably wouldn't be like, oh yeah, I'm watching a weird version of Peter Pan right now.
Come with us to Neverland. You'll never grow old, but you must feed.
One last question I had for you. Which is more likely, vampire in real life? Vampires or werewolves?
Probably vampires because like so many bloodborne illnesses and stuff, and I feel like there's also not as much. There's not as much of a change because like lycanthropy, like the medical lycanthropy, isn't that common. But I feel like there's elements that could be associated with vampirism words that people would have more often. Sort of.
I mean, because if you think about it, a lot of the symptoms are similar, minus the fur, and I mean, they crave.
That's true.
An extension of like raw, bloody, whatever, and they have this ravenous nature. They both are extra strong, extra fast, and depending on the vampire lore, they're both going to rip you to shreds to get what they want. So
I was kind of thinking with like how vampire bats, like actual vampire bats, have so many different diseases as carriers, but because I actually just found this out recently. They have like enzymes in them that keep them safe from it, but they still carry it. Also, very cute fact: vampire bats will share blood with each other, and if they don't share, and if a vampire bat doesn't share blood with another one, the other one will remember that and not share blood with it. Vampire bats are like so much smarter than we realize. Like we think they're like based on like brain size that they're almost on like the same level as like dolphins and stuff because they
Oh, wow.
remember roots. There's a I'm going on a weird tangent. There's a channel on YouTube I love called Madly Mesozoic, and he did a whole thing of like what if vampire bats went to the Jurassic period and like how they would evolve and stuff. I feel like you would really like that. Ashley, you should check it out.
I'm gonna look it up.
Yes, it's so fun.
So my question is, what is Cujo then? Is Cujo, could he be a werewolf or could he be like a vampire dog?
Yeah,
he
because
just a
he was
dog with
bitten by the
rabies?
bat. I would say,
But
He's
he's a
just a
dog.
rabid dog.
yeah. I would say in terms of like theme of it, probably a werewolf because it's something like innocent changed into a beast. While with vampires, it doesn't seem as often as when the character is changed that it's as tragic. Because more often they're the real villains of the movies.
I don't know, because I feel like Cujo, because he was never human and it's not a conflict of his humanity
Right.
and like struggling between human and beast, like he's just canine that's now more aggressive. And he
Yeah.
didn't really go through like a physical
That's
change
true.
other than I'm showing my teeth more and I'm drooling more, but he was still him. There wasn't as drastic of a like going from a human to a wolf or a human growing fangs and becoming like a vampire or something. He's just a dog that got really, really aggressive.
Yeah.
So we've done a lot of research into vampires, and there always seems to be an explanation around that period of time of why people would be accused of being vampires. Like, what was going on at that period of time that would lead people to think, oh, that's a vampire, when it's really explained by something else, like skin, diseases or skin allergies to the sun and iron deficiencies and blood disorders. However, with werewolves, we have over centuries and centuries of time people reporting humans turning into beasts to the point where they're like, I saw this person turn into a beast. And we've got Native Americans that also have it embedded in their lore, humans that turn into animals. The positive ones, it's maybe more of like a spirit animal. The negative ones are more of the skinwalkers.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, where is that coming from? Is there some basis in truth on that? Because a lot of the stuff we talk about, zombies and vampires, there's a lot of like, there's an explanation there that maybe just people didn't realize at the time, right? Diseases that weren't understood at the time. But when it comes to werewolves and people saying, I full on saw this person turn into an animal, like, what is that? I don't know any medical thing out there now that would make sense of that.
That's a good question.
Maybe they're real.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I mean, why throughout history do so many people wear wolf skins when they're fighting and stuff?
Yeah.
Like the Romans did it, the Vikings did it, the Native Americans did it. So many people. Because could it be?
Spartans, what is your profession? I couldn't resist.
Boom, mic drop.
Fellows, this has been such a fun conversation on werewolves and horror. Do we have any other final thoughts or tangents we want to go on before we start to wrap this awesome episode up? Because I'm having a howling good time.
There's I haven't seen anything for it besides the poster, but there's a new movie called Werewolves coming out in December, and I'm going completely blind to go see it. I'm like, yeah, I'm down.
We're all going.
Yep.
It's going to be an adventure.
Yes.
Now, Bodhi, do you have any upcoming projects or anything you want to talk about for our awesome listeners to check out?
I'm looking to, like I said before, I'm looking to publish my script Wolves in Trenches. There's another script I finished, completed, and getting copyright for called Peter and the Wolf, which has a lot of inspiration for werewolves, but isn't directly a werewolf movie. It's, if I explain it, it's going to be really weird. It's a really weird concept, but I love it. But no, nothing really right now.
BJ, John Thomas.
I can talk werewolves all day long. I love it so much, and I'm glad that you are kind of an expert on it. Like legitimately, there's so many things that you've done, the research on with it. Not only just the actual lore, but seeing all of the movies, and it's great. I am on your side, sir. I am on the werewolf side of things more than the vampire side of things. And yeah, take that, Ashley.
Cover your eyes, Bodhi. I'm about to make a rude gesture at my co-host.
Like in the Christina Ricci werewolf movie where the werewolf flipped them off. Like, best shots ever.
John Thomas, do you have anything final you want to add?
BJ's wrong. I'm on the vampire side. How about that?
I knew you were my favorite. So, no, I get the obsession with werewolves. Not saying you're obsessed, but I do understand why people really, really gravitate to werewolves. I myself, I love the concept of werewolves. I love the lore behind werewolves. I am still wondering what people are seeing, because part of me is like, that has no explanation that I can think of. So what's out there? What's the truth behind that? But would definitely love to have you come back on and talk more werewolves with us whenever you're available.
I would talk, honestly, any horror stuff too. I'd be down. Ghouls, zombies, vampires,
Yes.
Teenagers. They're all scary.
Teenagers are very scary.
Yes, they are.
All right, guys. Well, this has been an awesome episode. My words, I'm tripping over my tongue today. This has been an awesome episode. Thank you, Bodhi, for coming on. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad to see you again. All right, John Thomas, do you want to bring us home?
I do, I guess. Just kidding. But like Ashley and BJ both said, thank you, Bodhi, for coming on. It's always fun to talk about werewolves and all kinds of other crazy things. So thank you for that, and look forward to when you come back on. So thank you again. And thank you to all of our listeners for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your hosts. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley, Lunar Goddess, the vampire lover.
And I'm BJ Segura.
You know you're going to have to do that every episode.
That's the thing now, BJ, yeah. Oh, Lord. If you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss BJ howling like that again.
Also, don't forget to check out 3hauntedpodcast.com, where you'll find all of our past and current season episodes, as well as guest information and all kinds of awesome merch.
Until next time. Ow!